Cyclones developing off Australia on both sides on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for March 15th. So we have two sort of active systems. Of course, Filippo turned post-tropical is now drifting down towards the southeast, an 18S, a tropical depression. We've also got not a cyclone yet, but nearly there into the Gulf of Carpentaria, already sparking warnings in Australia. In the Atlantic, it's 77 days until hurricane season, and there's no areas of interest, you'll be pleased to know. It's a pretty quiet tropics and a massive weather system over the United States right now, which caused so many problems last night. And of course, we covered that live. 60 days until hurricane season in the Eastern Pacific, and there's no areas of interest here right now. It's very quiet there. Just a few detached little areas of thunderstorms that are lurking around, and a little disturbance south of Mexico, but nothing significant or concerning. In the Western Pacific, it looks like this, also fairly quiet. A little disturbance over Micronesia, doesn't look like that's getting up to much either. And the North Indian Ocean is extremely quiet. There is barely a cloud in sight across the whole Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. 18S is still a tropical depression off the coast of Western Australia and stalling a little bit. 90% now for the area of interest off the top end of Australia, and now we've marked a 10% between New Caledonia and Fiji for a potential development there in the next few days. Ex-cyclone Filippo is rushing off towards the southeast at this point. No further threat to land, of course, and nothing else expected over there in the southwest Indian Ocean in the next 7 days. And looking briefly at the South Pacific as well, no areas of interest here, although there's a few interesting little features, and eventually that 10% will end up on this screen as well as it moves on over the international dateline and enters the South Pacific. So the main issues right now then, 94S, we have a cyclone warning for the Northern Territory Queensland border to Numbulwar, Groote Eylandt and Borroloola, with a cyclone watch for Mornington Island and Robinson River. It is 59 kilometers from Umbakumba, 98 from Alyangula, 161 from Nalumbi, 185 from Numbulwar and 302 from Ngukur further inland in the top end of Australia, the Northern Territory. So this system is mainly going to be a rain threat, but it could produce some strong winds as well. We'll cover that in a moment. Here's 18S, still a tropical depression at this point and struggling to really get itself going. It is 230 kilometers northwest of Barrow Island, 308 from Onslow, 321 from Exmouth, 330 from Dampier and 346 from Karratha. This system could really strengthen without warning. It is not moving very much at all right now, but general movement is towards the southwest. Still a question mark as to whether it will, or how close it will get to land, whether it will impact the area with tropical storm force winds. Here's the latest satellite imagery. First of all, a quick look at the remnants there. And it's moving off towards the southeast of Filippo, and this is water vapor imagery, looking very poor, it has to be said. Where is it? It's somewhere in there, and you'll see on the next imagery the RAM imagery that you can just about make out the center there as it moves off towards the southeast, and a big reposition of that floater I think has just completely messed that up. Well, this is the Australian region right now, and just on the very edges of the screen on either side, those two systems, 18S on the left-hand side and 94S on the right-hand side. 18S certainly with that circulation and a massive area of cloud tops next to it. 94S, it's got decent rotation, but we're still not sure about that circulation just yet, especially on the eastern side. First of all, looking at 18S, just off the coast of Western Australia, as you can see, they're not really getting any significant rainfall right now. It's all occurring offshore, and my goodness, isn't it? Very high cloud tops that are really starting to push up in the last few hours. Well into the minus 80s. It's just starting to fizzle away slightly in those latest images. but a remarkable comma shape that we've got there on the western side of the storm, which is obviously there a sign that it's being significantly sheared in that direction as well. And this is the radar imagery of that area. It's not really picking up anything offshore, just a few rain showers though along the western Australian coast there south of Exmouth. Now this is 94S and we're watching that one very closely, that potential circulation really starting to take shape, but it's still very broad and disorganized. Some more cloud tops blowing up as well, not far from the system's center on the left hand side, not far from Groote Eylandt, and also towards the southwest extending further inland. Very difficult to talk about place names around here because it's very sparsely populated, but a few of those that we've already mentioned so far, Numbulwar as well, probably getting a lot of rain right now underneath this system. Obviously really loaded on the western side, the eastern side nothing going on there at all. There's radar imagery showing that little circulation. Is it getting good enough to call it a tropical cyclone yet? Well, if not, we're mighty close, and it will probably go straight in at tropical storm status because the estimated winds right now are 45 miles per hour in this system, so it will be delivering potentially disruptive storm force winds. Little look at the radar over the Cape York Peninsula as well, tripping over my own words, and a very wet affair there too, but not that tropical cyclone that we were thinking might have occurred. And there's a quick look at the US right now, and that's still going on, that big severe weather event. 2 slight risk areas today for more potential hail more than anything right now across the central US. And there's a wide shot of the Australian region with a lot of stuff going on right now all along that northern fringe of the Australian coast. Sea surface temperatures are creeping back up in the eastern Pacific with a few spots getting to 30 degrees, but still look towards the south there and you'll see that big area of cool waters, a sign of this potential La Nina. In the Atlantic, temperatures in the Caribbean getting up to about 28 degrees Celsius, extending further out over the MDR, and now in the western Pacific those temperatures in the South China Sea also getting a little bit better too, and a few spots above 28 degrees Celsius there, and also in the Philippine Sea. In the North Indian Ocean, some of those 26 degrees Celsius waters are now reaching West Bengal and just about to reach Bangladesh, so they're still creeping upwards ahead of the upcoming season. Southwest Indian Ocean is still boiling hot off the west coast of Madagascar, over 30 degrees Celsius quite clearly. Temperatures have abated quite a bit where Filippo has been, a little bit of a cool slot there now, and near Mauritius and Reunion it's around 28. Off the western coast of Australia, 80 Mile Beach area extremely warm, over 30 degrees Celsius, and the Gulf of Carpentaria similarly as well. The Bonaparte Gulf also looking very warm, over 30 degrees Celsius. The South Pacific also looking decent around Samoa towards Fiji, over 30 degrees in that area, as well as over Vanuatu towards the Solomon Islands. So looking decent for this potential tropical cyclone if the other conditions go in its favour. Compared to average, the sea surface temperatures look like this. The orange zones, that's above average, and the blue zones are below there. A little bit of a cool slot now in the western, off Western Australia out towards Indonesia, but generally warm across the globe right now, particularly in the Atlantic and in the far western Indian Ocean too. In the western Pacific, it's pretty average actually, and in the eastern Pacific, you've got a little bit of a hot and cold theme going on. Oceanic heat content is still sky high in the South Pacific in various points, generally quite far north, and in the northern Pacific we're still getting higher values creeping in there in the western Pacific, particularly not far from Guam, extending towards the Philippines, getting set for this upcoming season. Well then, let's check the computer models the next 5 days. This is what it's showing. So first of all, this is 18S, and you can see it's milling about once again for a few days. It's the 17th, 18th that it starts to become more powerful, gets those storm force winds and quite quickly towards hurricane force, and look at how much it's stalling around that area. So at first it looks like it might drift northwards a little bit, and then it hooks back towards the south and then makes its closest approach to Barrow Island and that general vicinity. Tropical storm force winds all along that coast, Exmouth possibly as well, and it gets to hurricane force. Now here's the other system, 94S, and it moves down towards the south there, pretty much bypassing Groote Eylandt towards the east, and then drifting southwestwards, making landfall, possibly hurricane strength, but it is extremely sparsely populated there. We're estimating a pressure of around 978 millibars at landfall at the moment is what's being predicted by the GFS model. And that would correlate to a Category 1 hurricane equivalent, possibly Category 3 on the Australian scale. And this is the South Pacific. Look for this little system near Fiji. There it is moving through and then on towards the southeast, possibly getting just a brief window of opportunity. And there's another one there on the left-hand side as well, between Vanuatu and New Caledonia at the end of that 5-day period, around the 19th, 20th of March. We've circled that first one again just in case you missed it. There it is, moving off towards that direction, southeastwards after Fiji, and then through Tonga and on towards the cyclone graveyard. And then that second system at the very end there as a very, very brief period of opportunity. Now let's take a look at the rainfall expectations for the Australian region, and once again they are extremely high. Again, it's very hit and miss for the Western Australian coast from 18S. This storm is going to be one that will be a bit of a tease. Rainfall amounts along that area near Karratha getting up above 8 inches, possibly 200 millimeters. Out to sea though, over 28 inches. And from the other system, 94S, over land, we could be looking at nearly 30 inches of rainfall. That's 750 millimeters, by the way. And it's really significant amounts all the way up the coast of the top end as well. Cape York Peninsula also getting their own rain event too, over 23 inches over land there. That is over 500 millimeters, so a very wet affair for multiple places along the North Australian coast. Not all of those locations, but quite a lot. Longer range then, we're continuing to watch 18S as it starts to trawl out towards the west there. Looks like it peaks probably as a Category 2 hurricane equivalent, and then it continues to drift towards the west there, maybe even slightly northwest, and is on a gradual terminal weakening phase as it continues to move out there day 5 through 10. We don't show the long range on that one, but it's a foregone conclusion, just continues to weaken and eventually fizzles out. And this is the South Pacific for that medium range period. There's a little cyclone that looks like it might try to form there off the coast of the Cape York Peninsula, very quickly moving inland, and then potentially the second system entering that circle there, moving southwards past New Caledonia. So potentially 2 more brief tropical cyclones there. GFS is definitely having a field day. We'll continue to watch those closely. We haven't marked either of those systems on our charts yet. That's all the serious stuff done. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our products as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt is still ready to go. We are indeed waiting. Well, in the Scilly range, there's a potential spin-up that occurs southwest of Madagascar. What an odd place that would be for a spin-up storm. It loses its character quite quickly though, but that could well be a subtropical development getting close towards the areas that Filippo impacted just a few days ago. There it is again, watching it move briefly southwestwards and then towards the south. Getting a circulation, and then it does die off rather quickly and joins a very large extratropical feature down towards the higher latitudes. And in the South Pacific, continuing to watch that other system, it does keep going for a little bit longer past New Caledonia, that tropical cyclone. It certainly is one there, but it is Scilly range, and then a lot more windiness going on there. Is that another potential cyclone? I don't know about that. It doesn't look like it at all actually, but it is potentially a wind event there for Queensland, but that is in the very long range right near the end of the month. Well, goodness me, that was a ride and a half, wasn't it? Let's take a look at what happened on this day. It was Cyclone Honorinina. What a name. A Category 3, which was making landfall in Madagascar today. There was no images of the landfall as far as I know. That image there is from its peak intensity a couple of days earlier as a very powerful 175 mile per hour Category 5 storm. We also had the formation of Iarima further towards the east over the Indian Ocean proper, and it remained a very weak storm, only peaking at around 40 miles per hour on its movement south. 1986 on this day. Well, back to today, we are still code yellow, and it is for 94S. The next name in the Atlantic, the first name that is Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, it is still Hone. In the Western Pacific, we're looking out for Iwinia, and in the North Indian Ocean, it's Remal. Of course, previous models had an inkling that the Western Pacific might have seen a storm soon. It looks like those signals have backed off entirely. And that's what you get with the models sometimes. In the Australian region, the next name is still Megan. It hasn't got a name, none of these systems have been named yet. The Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Gamane, and in the South Pacific, it's Peter. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. Hope to see you again tomorrow.